Hi besties, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Rachel and welcome to my December wrap up. So in the month of December, I read 11 books, I want to say. And December is always a weird reading month for me because I do a lot of rereads. I read some Christmas romances. I'm just very casual with my reading. So this wrap up, it's hopefully going to be interesting to you. I'll try to keep my wrap ups of my rereads pretty short, but I did still want to talk to you guys about the books that I read in December because I did read some new favorites and I also had some major duds. So I want to discuss those with you all. So let's get straight into it. These are all the books I read in December. All right, so number one, starting out very strong, I read Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh. This is a Christmas romance and it's sort of a friends to lovers romance. Our two characters are from Ireland, but they live in Chicago. They end up meeting on a flight at Christmas time when they are flying from Chicago back to Ireland, and they strike up a friendship where they plan to fly home with each other every single year, and they always end up meeting on the airplane and sitting next to each other and just forming this really great bond. In the present timeline, they are trying to get home to Ireland, but there are a ton of storms, so they kind of have to do like a planes, trains, automobiles thing where they fly all over the world trying to get home in time for Christmas and falling in love along the way. This book was absolutely fantastic. It is one of my new favorite Christmas romances and even just romances in general. Our two characters were very funny. There was a lot of wit in this book that I really appreciated. I really liked the sense of humor in this book. I thought that their romance was developed in a really great way and it was just fun. I personally really like the setting of airplanes and airports and travel, so that was really enjoyable in this book, and I thought that the Christmas vibes were very good as well. This book definitely reminds me of an Emily Henry book, so I think if you like Emily Henry, you should pick this up because it felt very similar. I feel like she writes romance very similarly, and I just really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and I could definitely see myself reading this next Christmas. The next book I read in December is How the Grump Saved Christmas by Claire Kingsley. I absolutely love this cover. This is so cute. This was definitely a cover buy. In this book, we have a grumpy sunshine dynamic. Our main character works at her family's Christmas farm, which has been struggling financially lately, and then our love interest, his name is Elias Stoneheart. He is not only our main character's ex-boyfriend, but he is also up for a big promotion at his company, and if he can convince his ex and her family to close down the Christmas village that they run and sell it, he would get a huge promotion. He also really hates Christmas and is just a very grumpy guy. I thought that this book was cute. I think I gave it a 3 or 3.5 star rating. It didn't quite live up to Holiday Romance, which I read right before it, so that could have been why. I liked this and I think it's like a perfectly fine, good Christmas romance. I would recommend it. It just didn't really do anything for me over the top. I didn't really like the female main character. She did seem a little bit immature at times, but I will say overall I did like this book. I especially liked our male main character. I liked seeing his growth and I thought that this book was cute. It also takes place in Washington, so I'm giving it extra points for that. The next book that I read in December, I read on my Kindle, and that was Wreck My Plans. I believe this is by Jillian Meadows. I will have a photo up. So this book is a brother's best friend Christmas romance, and our main character goes back to her family's house for the holidays, and then her brother's best friend, who she hasn't seen in years, shows up, and the two of them start off kind of as adversaries, and she's not really happy to see him, but slowly they kind of break those walls down and start to kind of reveal their feelings for one another. They have some history, and we just kind of see things take off from there. I unfortunately though really did not like this book. I gave it 2 stars. I had so many issues with this book. I did vlog this book and then also the 2 that I just talked about, so if you want to see more in-depth thoughts on it, go ahead and watch that. But my biggest issue with this book is I just felt that it was so cringe, so corny. I really did not like this romance. I didn't like the dialogue. I didn't like the characters. I thought that these 2 characters were very poorly done versions of the grumpy sunshine tropes. I feel like they were caricatures. I felt that they lacked like any depth. I did not really understand the motivations of our female main character. She would be really immature and angry at him, and then she would get over it and be really sunshiny, and I just don't really feel like there was a lot of natural relationship development happening in this book. And really just the dialogue, the nicknames they called each other, their interactions, I did not enjoy at all. Honestly, this is one of my least favorite romances that I have ever read. I really did not like it. And it started like right in the beginning. Like I think I checked in when I was like 5% of the way into the book at that point, and I was like, wow, I'm really not liking this. So that is unfortunate. I will also say, as far as like Christmas vibes go, I don't think this is a super Christmassy book, so it doesn't even really have that going for it. I'm sorry to say, I really disliked this book. Yeah, let's just move on. All right, the next book that I read in December is The 7-Year Slip. I have seen this book going around everywhere. I have seen so many amazing things about it, and so I decided to pick it up right before I filmed my best books of the year because I thought that there was a chance that this book could have made that list just because of the absolutely glowing reviews that I heard about this book. Unfortunately, it did not, but I still did enjoy this book. This book follows a main character who inherits her aunt's apartment, and she does not realize that this apartment has a bit of magic to it. So there is a bit of magical realism to this romance. Essentially, when our character steps into the apartment. It takes her back 7 years, and she finds a man living in her aunt's apartment because 7 years ago, unbeknownst to her, this man was allowed by her aunt to stay in this apartment for the summer. But because our main character is entering the apartment at present day, it kind of ends up bringing them together in a very unique way, which I thought was a really, really fun addition to this novel. I think it just gave it a little bit more, and it was fun to see kind of how that all played out, and the conflict that came from that I think was pretty well done. I liked the writing of this book. I thought that it was funny, and I thought that it was like a good book. I gave it 3 stars, which to be honest, I did expect to give it a little bit more because I honestly don't know if I've seen anyone give this book less than 4 stars, and I totally get it. It's one of those books that I can understand why someone would love this. I just wasn't very moved by the characters and the romance. I thought that it was fun, I thought that it was cute, but it really didn't do anything for me other than that. I want to feel emotions, I want to be really, really in love with the characters, and I liked them perfectly fine, but overall this book just left me feeling like not underwhelmed, not overwhelmed, but perfectly whelmed. So I liked it. It's a 3-star. I don't think I'm gonna think about this book too much, but I definitely see why people like it. Right, and the final contemporary romance that I read in the month of December was Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. This is a billionaire romance, and our main character, Dahlia, she is a very famous interior designer, but after a heartbreak, she ends up going back to her hometown and running into her old childhood friend, who she's always kind of had a rivalry with, and the two of them reconnect and start working on this like old house project together, and their feelings are revealed for one another. I absolutely love this book. I thought that it was so, so cute. I hadn't really had any interest in this when it came out, but I just saw so many people talking about it, and I feel like the Lauren Asher girlies are always having so much fun, and I wanted to give her work another shot. I have had mixed experiences with Lauren Asher's books. I have read the Dirty Air series, which I do really like some of the books in that series, but I also disliked some of the books in that series. And then I did try to read The Fine Print, but I DNF'd it because I really didn't like the characters and I thought it was really cheesy. But I just saw a lot of good things about this book, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give it a shot. I picked it up on a whim, and I actually ended up really, really loving this. I don't know why, but Julian and Dahlia, they just really worked for me. I really connected to them. I teared up. I never tear up when I read a contemporary romance. I don't really get like overwhelmed by happy emotions in a book. It's usually when something like tragic happens, I will start crying, and normally that happens in like a fantasy, but I was tearing up at the love proclamations, what Julian was doing for Dahlia, the conversations they were having. This was a really, really sweet book, and it was funny too, and I just really loved Dahlia and Julian and their families, and the setting. It was very cute. It also takes place during the fall, and it definitely does give me a little bit of like Stars Hollow vibe. So I really liked this, and I am going to continue on with this series whenever the second book comes out. I think it's going to be a nanny single dad trope, which is like god tier trope for me. So I'm really happy that I picked this book up. This is definitely, I think, my favorite book by Lauren Asher, and I'm excited to see where the series goes. Oh, and I gave this 4 stars, by the way. So now we are going to be moving on to fantasy romance. So I did read 2 new to me fantasy romances. The first one being A Court That's Cruel and Lovely by Stasia Stark. This is a fae fantasy romance, and in the beginning of this book, our main character, Prisca, she lives in a world where when people are born, they are born with a bit of magic, but as infants, they go through like a process to give their magic up to the gods to protect them from the evil fae. But sometimes these rituals of getting rid of that magic doesn't end up succeeding, and if a person grows up with magic in them and they don't report it, they will be executed by the kingdom. So our main character, Prisca, she does have magic. She doesn't tell anyone about it. She is prepared to escape if she is ever caught, and that is exactly what happens. She accidentally reveals her magic in front of some of her fellow villagers, and so she has to run away. While she is running away, she runs into a group of mercenaries, and they don't really care much for her, particularly the main mercenary. His name is Lorien. He doesn't really want anything to do with her, but a few of those mercenaries do try to help her out because she's going through a bit of a struggling time when they run into her, and she ends up sticking with them, traveling with them for a little bit. When they realize what her magic is, they see a way that she can help them, and so they kind of create a bargain where they will protect her and get her where she needs to go as long as she uses her magic to help them with their mission that they're on. That's all I'm gonna say as far as the plot, because things definitely in the second half of the book take a totally different turn, but I had so much fun with this book. I gave this book 4 stars. I thought it was really fantastic. I love Lorien and Prisca. Lorien is very Lorcan from Throne of Glass coded, particularly in the first half of the book. He is grumpy, he is careless, he is kind of just on his mission, doesn't really care for anyone else, but then Prisca does start to warm his heart as the book goes on, and I just really, really loved their dynamic. The reason that this was not a 5-star for me was definitely in the second half of the book. I think some of the pacing kind of slowed it down, and I really loved kind of the action-packed pacing of the first half of the book, but things did slow down a little bit once Prisca kind of got involved in some court politics. But the book ended in a really, really crazy way, and in a way that I am so excited to see what happens in book 2. I am going to be reading book 2 this month, and I'm really excited. I hope that I love the way that the story goes. Okay, so next up, I read Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, and I am so sorry, but I did not really enjoy this book. I've seen like mixed reviews of this book. I have seen people absolutely loving it, but my experience with this book just wasn't great, and I just don't think that it hit as well as Fourth Wing did. I really, really liked Fourth Wing. I gave it 5 stars. I had so much fun with that book. I did not have fun with this book. I'm just kind of over this book at this point, but I gave it 2 stars, and let me tell you why. So one of the things that I think this book struggled with is the pacing. I feel like the first half of this book was kind of boring. I feel like we were essentially just repeating what happened in the first half of the first book, Fourth Wing, and I didn't really expect that, I guess, and I don't want to necessarily rate a book badly because what I thought the plot of this book was going to be didn't happen. I don't want to set myself up like that because then I'll never be happy with the book, but I was definitely not enjoying kind of just a repeat of the school setting and meeting all these new characters and watching them go through a lot of what we've already seen. I wanted to learn more new information, see our characters in different settings, and kind of move the plot forward in the way that I thought it would because of how Fourth Wing ended, but that didn't really happen. So I felt that the pacing of the book was pretty boring, particularly in the first half, and we also met a ton of new characters that I just don't care about. Am I supposed to care about them? I don't really know, but I just felt a little bit overwhelmed by that. I wish that we had just gotten to develop the characters that we already have a little bit more. Of course, as fantasy series go on, we're always going to see the addition of new characters, but I just feel like this was a lot and very overdone, and I felt lost, and I couldn't really care about anyone too much. Another big issue that I had with this book was the romance between Violet and Xaden. I knew that the romance was going to go this way in some capacity because of how the first book ended, and I wasn't looking forward to that, but I was hopeful that things would kind of get cleared up, get fixed, and we could move right along. But I particularly found Violet to be very annoying. I felt that we repeated ourselves so much with the romance, and we just couldn't get past this just very frustrating dynamic that Xaden and Violet have. I don't think that the way that the romance was handled was done very well. It was very frustrating. I also think Violet's character development was minimal to none. I don't really feel like she grew a lot in this book. Xaden was kind of nothing to me in this book. And the ending. I hate to say it, but I literally didn't even have a reaction to the ending. I didn't really care that that was happening. I'm finding myself having trouble trying to find things to care about and latch onto in this book the way that I did in book 1. In book 1, I had a lot of fun reading Fourth Wing. I thought the story of Violet going through her first year at Basgiath Academy, learning how to be a dragon rider, that was fun. That had a obvious plot development. We were moving forward. This felt all over the place, and I just don't know if we knew where we wanted to go in book 2. There was also a lot of info dumping, which typically the second book in a fantasy series does have a lot of info dumping, but I don't know. I don't think it was done well. Also, the whole redemption arc storyline, if you know, you know. It felt kind of weird and out of nowhere, and also doesn't really make sense when you look at what happened in the first book. I don't know. I'm all over the place, but so is this book. So I gave this 2 stars. I am very disappointed because once again, Fourth Wing is a 5-star read. I really enjoyed that book. I had so much fun with it. It's not perfect. It has flaws, but it was very, very fun, and I truly enjoyed myself while reading it. This book has way too many flaws and wasn't fun. So that is why it got such a low rating from me. Another fantasy romance that I read, and I did read this on my Kindle as well, was Lady of Darkness by Melissa K. Rorick. Now, if you've been here for a while, you may know that I did read Lady of Darkness earlier this year, and I had a fine reading experience with it, but I didn't really love it, and when I tried to pick up the second book, I ended up DNFing the second book, and overall, I just didn't really feel a desire to continue on with the series. Well, after some time passed, I don't know why, but I kept thinking about this series. All I can say is the series has been haunting me. I don't know why. I don't know what has compelled me to think about the series so much, and I was like, you know what? I want to get this book out of my system, so I'm going to reread Lady of Darkness, and honestly, I'm really, really glad that I did. I enjoyed this book much more on the second time around. I did listen to the audiobook the first time, and I wonder if that impacted my experience. Maybe I just don't really like the narrator's voice or how they did the audiobook, but I physically read it this time and I had a lot of fun. I think this has a lot of potential to be a very good fantasy romance series. I gave this book somewhere between a 3 and a 3.5 star rating. So while my rating didn't change too much from the first time, I enjoyed the book a lot more. I absorbed the story a lot more. I liked our characters, and I see the potential now. I think when I first read it, I didn't see potential, but this time around, I see it, and I'm excited to see what happens, and I'm invested in these characters. I like our love interest. I like our main character. We have so many other different side characters that I think have really interesting stories, and I know from starting the second book we're going to be meeting even more, and there's going to be a lot of traveling happening. So I don't know if this will end up being a 5-star series for me, but I'm really happy that I reread Lady of Darkness. I gave it another shot. I enjoyed it much more, and I'm going to continue on with the series in 2024. All right, and last but not least, I just wanted to go through my rereads very quickly. Number 1, I read Tower of Dawn. This is the second to last book in the Throne of Glass series. I have been rereading the Throne of Glass series throughout 2023, and it was time to pick pick up Tower of Dawn. So I finished this and I just have Kingdom of Ash left. This is my least favorite book in the series, and I gave this book 3 stars. I just am not crazy about this book the way that I am crazy about like literally every other Sarah J Maas book. This just does not do it for me. The reason why I just don't really like this book very much, or just don't like it as much as the other books in the Throne of Glass series, is because our main character, who is Chaol Westfall. Chaol is a significant character in the Throne of Glass series. He is in every single book, but in this book, Sarah decided to make him the main character. He travels to another continent as part of the kind of like plot line in the Throne of Glass series, and he has kind of his own mission there. He does a lot of healing, both mentally and physically. He also has like a romance storyline in this book, but I just don't think he is a compelling main character. I do not find Chaol interesting. I just don't think he's that guy. I think he does well as kind of a secondary character in the other books. I just don't like his POV. I don't like being in his head. He's boring to me. That's like the biggest thing. I find Chaol to be boring. I don't find him intriguing, and to be in his head for 600 plus pages is not a good time. So this is my least favorite book in the Throne of Glass series. But positives that I will say about this book: number one, I do really like the setting of this book. We go to another continent, which is very exciting. I wish that the rest of the crew went here because I think that that would be really great, and I just think that the world building in this book is particularly very, very good. This is also a very significant book for the plot. There is a ton of stuff that you need to know in here before you start Kingdom of Ash. It's a very significant part of the series. Of course, it exists for a reason. I just wish that Chaol was not at the helm. I think that's my biggest problem, but it definitely does have very important information and progresses the story in such a way that it does impact what happens in Kingdom of Ash. So it's okay, it's fine, it's a 3 star. In December, I also read A Court of Mist and Fury. I had kind of set out to reread the entire ACOTAR series. I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon, or in the time that I originally had allotted out for myself to finish it, but I just decided to reread A Court of Mist and Fury. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I think it is a masterpiece. I have read this book 5 or 6 times now, and I love it every single time. It's really, really fantastic. If you know, you know. Like, this book is just, it's everything. I feel like this is one of Sarah's best books, and I absolutely love it and had a great time rereading it. All right, so the very last book I'm going to talk about is once again a reread. I decided to reread Divine Rivals in preparation for Ruthless Vows coming out, and I'm really, really happy I did. I absolutely loved this book. The writing is really fantastic, and the characters, Roman and Iris, make this book a 5 star. Some of like the plot and the world building, like, I could do with or without, but Roman and Iris are excellent characters. They are so well written, and the romance is so good. This book is beautiful. Like, truly, the romance between them is absolutely stunning. I'm really glad that I reread this book. I gave it 5 stars on a reread, and I thought it was really good. So I'm excited to pick up Ruthless Vows and see what I think of that. I hope that it is a satisfying conclusion. All right, my loves, so that is going to be it for my December wrap up. I would love to know, what was the best book that you read in December? Perhaps I can add it to my TBR if I haven't already read it. And if you made it to this point in the video and you wanted to leave an emoji, go ahead and leave the butterfly emoji. I really appreciate that you watched this video. I hope that you're having a fantastic day. I love you all so, so much, and I will catch you guys in the next one.